She looked into the eyes of the most powerful alpha in the region and spoke the word no one dared to say, "No." Now the entire pack wants her head. The word "no" had never sounded so deafening. Serena's voice cut through the sacred circle like a blade through silk, and the silence that followed pressed against her chest until she could barely breathe. Every pair of eyes in the gathering bore into her trembling form, their golden gleams reflecting disbelief, shock, and something far more dangerous, fury. She had just done the unthinkable. She had rejected Darius Kane, the Alpha Supreme, in front of the entire pack. Her hands shook as she stood in the center of the ancient stone circle, the moonlight casting long shadows that seemed to reach for her like grasping fingers. The ceremonial gold collar meant to mark her as Luna lay discarded at her feet, its precious metal catching the light as if mocking her decision. 28 years of human life had not prepared her for this moment, for the weight of tradition crushing down on her shoulders like an avalanche. "Serena!" Darius's voice was barely controlled, a low rumble that made every instinct she'd only recently discovered scream at her to submit. He stood across from her, 6 feet of raw power wrapped in human skin, his dark eyes holding a storm she'd never seen before. "You don't understand what you're refusing." But she did understand. That was the problem. 3 months ago, Serena Martinez had been a respected therapist in the human community, known for her stubborn dedication to her clients and her uncanny ability to see through their facades to the pain beneath. She helped broken people rebuild their lives, one careful session at a time. She believed in choice, in healing, in the fundamental right of every person to determine their own path. Then came the night that changed everything. The transformation had torn through her body like lightning, reshaping bone and sinew, while her mind screamed in terror and confusion. When she'd awakened, naked and disoriented in the forest clearing, Darius had been there. Not as the stranger she'd glimpsed around town, but as something far more dangerous, her destined mate, according to ancient laws she'd never known existed. The irony wasn't lost on her. All her life, she'd fought against people trying to control others, trying to force them into boxes they didn't choose. Now she found herself facing the ultimate trap, biology itself demanding she surrender her will to someone else, no matter how magnificent that someone might be. "I understand perfectly," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "You want me to accept a position I never asked for, in a world I never chose, bound by rules I had no part in making." A ripple of shock moved through the gathered pack members. In the front row, she could see Elena Blackwood, the eldest advisor, her weathered face twisted in horrified disapproval. The woman had lived through 5 generations of pack leadership, had seen the rise and fall of alphas, and never had she witnessed such blatant defiance of the natural order. "Child!" Elena's voice cracked like a whip. "You speak of things you do not comprehend." The bond between Alpha and Luna is not mere tradition. It is the foundation upon which our survival rests. Serena turned toward the older woman, her newly enhanced senses picking up the sharp scent of fear beneath Eleanor's anger. Survival, built on forcing someone into a role against their will, isn't survival worth having. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and she could feel the temperature drop as every pack member's protective instincts flared. These people, her people now, whether she liked it or not, had endured centuries of persecution. They'd hidden in shadows, lost loved ones to hunters, sacrificed everything to preserve their bloodlines. To them, her refusal wasn't just personal. It was a threat to everything they'd fought to protect. Marcus Cole, Darius's beta and closest friend, stepped forward. Unlike the others, his expression held something that looked almost like understanding. "Serena, we know this is overwhelming. The transformation, the mating bond, it's a lot to process, but the pack needs someone who chooses to be here," she interrupted, her therapist training kicking in even as her wolf side snarled at contradicting a dominant male. How can I protect people I barely know? How can I lead when I don't even understand your laws? Darius moved then, crossing the circle in 2 powerful strides until he stood close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. This close, the mate bond pulled at her like a physical force, demanding she step closer, demanding she submit to the connection that promised to complete her in ways she'd never imagined. Because, he said quietly, his voice meant for her alone, you're already fighting for us. Even as you reject me, you're thinking about what's best for the pack. That's what makes you perfect for this. The sincerity in his voice almost broke her resolve. She could see the man beneath the alpha facade, tired, weighted down by responsibilities that had shaped him since childhood, desperately hoping she would choose to share that burden. But she could also see what he couldn't, accepting now, when fear and confusion clouded her judgment, would destroy them both. I can't, she whispered. Not like this. Not when I don't know who I am anymore. Something flickered across his features, pain maybe, or disappointment so profound it made her chest ache. But then, the alpha mask slammed back into place, and when he spoke, his voice carried the authority that had kept his people safe for over a decade. Very well. He stepped back, creating space that felt like a chasm between them. The circle has heard your decision. Elena rose from her seat, her walking stick tapping against the stone as she approached. This is unprecedented. The moon goddess herself has marked this pairing. To refuse is her right, Marcus said firmly, earning surprised looks from several pack members. Our laws may be ancient, but they're not tyrannical. If Luna Serena needs time... I'm not Luna anything, Serena said sharply, then immediately regretted her tone when she saw Marcus flinch. These people were trying to understand, trying to accommodate her human sensibilities in ways that clearly went against their deepest instincts. But understanding didn't make the situation any less impossible. Young Rebecca Torres, barely 18 and eager to defend her alpha, pushed to her feet. You don't know what you're giving up. Do you have any idea what other she-wolves would sacrifice for this honor? Then let one of them have it, Serena replied, though the words tasted bitter. The moment they left her lips, she felt Darius's reaction like a physical blow. The mate bond might be something she didn't understand, but the pain that lanced through it was unmistakable. It doesn't work that way, Eleanor said coldly. The goddess chooses. We do not negotiate with fate. Serena turned to face the assembled pack, these strangers who were supposed to become her family, her responsibility. Their faces showed everything from disappointment to outright hostility, and she couldn't blame them. In their world, she was rejecting not just a man, but the divine will that governed their existence. Then maybe it's time your goddess learned about consent, she said. The collective intake of breath was audible. Even Marcus looked shocked now, and Darius went so still, she wondered if he was even breathing. Elena's face went white, then red, then white again. Blasphemy, the old woman hissed. I dare question a system that treats women like property to be claimed. Serena's professional training kicked in, her voice taking on the calm authority she used with difficult clients. I've spent years helping people recover from situations where they lost control of their own lives. I won't voluntarily walk into one, even if it costs lives. The question came from David Park, a father of 3 whose entire family had been saved by Darius during a territorial dispute 5 years earlier. The Black Moon Pack has been testing our borders for months. They know about our situation. Without a unified leadership, people could die, Serena finished, the weight of that reality settling on her shoulders like lead. I know. But making decisions from fear never leads anywhere good. Darius had been silent through the exchange, but now he stepped forward again. When he spoke, his voice held a weariness that made him seem older than his 32 years. The pack meeting is over, he announced. Everyone return to your homes. Serena, He paused, her name sounding like a prayer on his lips. "We'll discuss this privately." As the circle began to disperse, conversations buzzing with shock and speculation, Elena approached Serena one last time. "You think you're protecting your independence, girl, but you're just delaying the inevitable. The bond doesn't disappear because you refuse to acknowledge it. And when the black moons come, and they will come, your stubbornness may cost us everything we've built here." With that pronouncement, the old woman hobbled away, leaving Serena alone in the circle with Darius and Marcus. "She's not wrong about the danger," Marcus said quietly. "Adrian Blackmoon has been looking for an excuse to expand his territory for years. If he thinks we're weakened by internal division—" "I know," Serena said, wrapping her arms around herself as the night air cut through her thin dress. "I'm not naive about the consequences, but I also know that leaders who act from desperation make terrible decisions. I won't be responsible for that." Darius approached her slowly, as if she might bolt at any sudden movement. "What do you need?" The question surprised her. After everything that had just happened, she'd expected anger, demands, perhaps even the assertion of dominance she'd heard whispers about. Instead, he was asking what she needed. "Time," she said honestly. "Understanding. I need to learn about this world I've been thrust into without feeling like I'm being pushed toward a predetermined conclusion. And if I give you that time, and you still choose to refuse—" She met his eyes, seeing the vulnerability he was trying so hard to hide. "I don't know, but at least then it would be a real choice, made by someone who understands what she's choosing." For a long moment, they stared at each other across the space that felt both intimate and impossibly vast. Then Darius nodded slowly. 2 months, he said. 2 months to learn, to understand, to decide. But Serena— His voice dropped to a growl that made her newly awakened wolf sit up and take notice. "The Black Moons won't wait for your education to be complete. If they move against us, I'll do whatever it takes to protect this pack, even if it means making decisions you won't like." As he walked away with Marcus, leaving her alone in the sacred circle, Serena felt the full weight of what she'd just set in motion. She'd bought herself time, but at what cost? The mate bond pulled at her like a physical ache, urging her to call him back, to accept the safety and belonging he offered. Instead, she picked up the discarded lunar collar, feeling its weight in her hands. Somewhere in the forest beyond the clearing, she could hear the sounds of the pack settling for the night, normal sounds of a community that had just had their entire world shifted by her refusal. Tomorrow, she would begin to learn what it really meant to be a werewolf. Tomorrow, she would start understanding the traditions she'd rejected and the people she'd disappointed. But tonight, she would go home to her small cottage and pretend for just a few more hours that her biggest problem was still managing her human therapy practice. As she walked away from the circle, Serena couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, not just by pack members who might be questioning her decision, but by something else entirely, something that had been waiting for this moment, for the rejection that would set other wheels in motion. She paused at the edge of the forest, looking back at the sacred stones where her fate had taken such a dramatic turn. The moonlight made everything look ethereal, magical, like a fairy tale where the princess had just refused the prince and doomed the kingdom. But what if the princess was right? What if sometimes the kingdom needed saving from traditions that no longer served it? Only time would tell whether her refusal had been the bravest thing she'd ever done, or the most catastrophic mistake of her life. The first week after the rejection felt like walking through quicksand. Every step Serena took seemed to drag her deeper into a world she didn't understand, while everyone around her watched with barely concealed judgment. The pack members who'd once greeted her with curious friendliness now averted their eyes when she passed, their discomfort palpable in the tense set of their shoulders. She'd tried to maintain her normal routine, seeing her human clients during the day and retreating to her cottage at night to research werewolf lore on obscure internet forums. but the mate bond made everything exponentially harder. Every time Darius was within a mile radius, her newly awakened wolf senses went haywire. She could smell his presence, feel the pull of their connection like a compass needle pointing north, and the constant low-level ache of separation was driving her to distraction. It was during her Thursday evening session with Mrs. Henderson, an elderly widow struggling with grief, that everything began to unravel. "You seem distracted today, dear," Mrs. Henderson observed, her rheumy eyes surprisingly sharp. "Are you quite all right?" Serena forced herself to focus on her client's concerned face, pushing down the restless energy that had been building all day. She'd caught Darius's scent on the wind that morning, pine and cedar mixed with something uniquely him, and hadn't been able to concentrate since. "I'm fine, Mrs. Henderson, just some personal matters I'm working through. Now, you were telling me about the dreams you've been having since Harold passed." But as Mrs. Henderson began describing her late husband's visits in her sleep, Serena's enhanced hearing picked up something that made her blood run cold. Footsteps outside the office. Multiple sets, moving with the predatory grace she was learning to recognize in her packmates. But these footsteps were wrong somehow, too measured, too coordinated. Her wolf instinct screamed danger. The window behind Mrs. Henderson exploded inward. Glass shattered across the office as three massive wolves burst through, their eyes glowing amber in the lamplight. Mrs. Henderson's scream died in her throat as shock froze her in place, but Serena was already moving, her body responding to threats with reflexes she didn't know she possessed. The lead wolf, bigger than any she'd seen in her limited pack experience, bared its teeth in what looked disturbingly like a smile. When it spoke, the words came out as a low growl that somehow formed human language. "Luna Serena, so nice to finally meet you properly." Black moons. The realization hit her like ice water. These weren't just random attackers. They'd come specifically for her. "What do you want?" she demanded, positioning herself between the wolves and her terrified client. Her own wolf was clawing at her control, demanding she shift and fight. But she'd only transformed twice since her awakening and had no idea how to control the process. "Adrian Blackmoon sends his regards," the lead wolf said, beginning to circle her desk. "He's very interested in meeting the she-wolf who had the audacity to refuse an alpha, particularly one whose bloodline is so interesting." Bloodline? What did they know about her bloodline that she didn't? "Mrs. Henderson," Serena said quietly, never taking her eyes off the circling predators, "I need you to walk very slowly to the door behind you. Don't run, don't look back, just walk." I don't understand what's happening," the older woman whispered. "You don't need to understand, just trust me and go." But as Mrs. Henderson began to shuffle toward the door, the second wolf moved to block her path. "I don't think so. Witnesses could be unproblematic." The casual cruelty in the wolf's tone made something snap inside Serena. All her life, she dedicated herself to protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. She wasn't about to let that change now. Mate bond crisis or no mate bond crisis. "You want me? Fine, but you leave her alone." The lead wolf's laugh was a sound no wolf should have been able to make. "How noble. But you see, little Luna, this isn't a negotiation. Our alpha wants you brought to him intact, but he said nothing about keeping your human friends breathing." That's when Serena felt it. A rage so pure and focused, it seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her human consciousness. The wolf inside her wasn't just angry, it was absolutely furious that these interlopers dared threaten someone under her protection. The transformation ripped through her without warning. One moment she was standing behind her desk in her professional blazer and pencil skirt. The next, she was a silver-furred wolf with teeth bared and hackles raised. The change was faster than either of her previous shifts, driven by protective instincts that overrode her inexperience. She launched herself at the nearest Black Moon wolf just as her office door burst open and Darius charged in, already in wolf form, his massive black frame filling the doorway. Behind him came Marcus and two other pack members she recognized but didn't know well. The office became a battleground. Furniture crashed and splintered as 7 wolves fought in a space meant for quiet conversations about human problems. Serena found herself moving with instincts she didn't know she possessed, working in perfect synchronization with Darius despite their recent conflict. When one of the Black Moons tried to flank him, she was there, her smaller frame allowing her to dart beneath his guard and rake claws across his exposed flank. When another wolf lunged for Mrs. Henderson, who was cowering in the corner, Serena and Darius moved as one, their combined assault driving the attacker back against the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. But it was when the lead wolf grabbed Mrs. Henderson by the throat that something extraordinary happened. Serena felt power surge through her, different from anything she'd experienced before. The air around her seemed to shimmer, and when she howled, the sound carried a resonance that made every wolf in the room freeze. Even Darius turned to stare at her, his dark eyes wide with shock. "Release her, now." The words came out in perfect human speech, despite her wolf form, something that should have been impossible for someone so newly transformed. The lead Black Moon's grip on Mrs. Henderson loosened involuntarily, his own wolf responding to the authority in her voice before his human mind could reassert control. But then his eyes narrowed and she saw recognition and something that looked like hunger. "Fascinating," he growled. "Adrian will be very pleased to learn his suspicions were correct. You're not just any bloodline, are you, little Luna?" Before she could ask what he meant, sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police about the disturbance. The Black Moons exchanged glances, then began backing toward the shattered window. "This isn't over," the leader said. "Tell your Alpha that the old treaties died with the old generation. The new era belongs to those strong enough to claim it." They vanished through the window as suddenly as they'd appeared, leaving behind only the destruction and Mrs. Henderson's traumatized whimpering. Serena shifted back to human form, grateful that her emergency clothes were still intact. Darius had insisted all pack members keep spare outfits in their cars after her first embarrassing naked awakening in the woods. She immediately went to Mrs. Henderson, wrapping her blazer around the older woman's shoulders. "Mrs. Henderson, look at me. You're in shock, but you're safe now. I know what you saw doesn't make sense, but I need you to listen carefully." The woman's eyes focused on her with difficulty. Were those really? "You had a terrible fall," Serena said gently, using the same calming tone she employed with her most traumatized clients. "You hit your head when my office window broke in the storm. You're going to have some confused memories, but the important thing is you're not seriously hurt." She'd learned about pack protocols for human exposure during her research, but she'd never imagined having to use them. The gentle manipulation of memory was possible for humans who'd experienced severe trauma. Their minds often created alternative explanations for things they couldn't process. Yes, the storm," Mrs. Henderson said slowly. "So much noise. I must have fallen." As the sirens grew closer, Darius and the others had already shifted back and were working to make the scene look like storm damage rather than a supernatural battle. Marcus was covering claw marks with fallen books, while the other pack members swept glass to create a pattern consistent with wind damage. "The police will want a statement," Darius said quietly, approaching Serena. "Can you handle this?" She nodded, though her hands were shaking. "Mrs. Henderson was here for her session when the storm hit. The window couldn't withstand the wind, and we both took shelter behind the desk until help arrived." "And the Black Moons?" "Never happened," she said firmly. "As far as anyone knows, we just had a very unlucky weather incident. Darius studied her face for a moment, and she caught a flicker of something that might have been approval. "That howl you did. How did you speak in wolf form?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I didn't even know it was possible. It's not for most wolves." His expression had grown troubled. "Serena, we need to talk. Tonight. There are things about your transformation, about your family history, that you need to know." Before she could respond, the police arrived, followed quickly by an ambulance for Mrs. Henderson. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of statements, insurance forms, and concerned inquiries from neighbors who'd heard the commotion. Through it all, Serena maintained her story with the practiced composure she'd learned in years of dealing with crisis situations. But underneath her calm exterior, her mind was racing. The Black Moons had known something about her bloodline, something significant enough to risk attacking her in broad daylight. Darius clearly knew more than he'd been telling her, and somehow she'd accessed abilities that shouldn't have been possible for a new wolf. As the last of the emergency responders left, Serena found herself alone in her destroyed office with Darius. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken questions and the weight of what had just happened. "They came for me specifically," she said finally. "This wasn't random." "No, it wasn't." Darius moved to her broken window, scanning the tree line beyond. "Adrian Blackmoon has been planning something for months. We thought it was just territorial expansion, but tonight changes everything. What aren't you telling me about my bloodline?" He turned from the window, and in his eyes she saw the same conflict she'd noticed during the claiming ceremony, the struggle between his protective instincts and his respect for her autonomy. "Your transformation wasn't random, Serena. 28-year-old humans don't just spontaneously become werewolves. Someone triggered your change, activated genetic markers that had been dormant your entire life." The implications hit her like a sledgehammer. "Someone did this to me? On purpose?" "We think so. And based on what you just displayed in here, whoever did it knew exactly what they were awakening." Serena sank into her chair, the only piece of furniture that had survived the fight relatively intact. Everything she'd believed about her transformation, about her sudden entry into the supernatural world, had been built on lies. "Who?" she whispered. "That's what we're going to find out," Darius said, his voice carrying the promise of retribution that made her wolf sit up and take notice. "But first, there's something you need to see, something Elena's been keeping in the pack archives since before my grandfather's time." He pulled out his phone, sending a quick text. "Marcus is bringing the car around. We're going to the sanctuary, to the records vault. It's time you learned the truth about what you really are." As they waited for Marcus, Serena looked around her destroyed office, the place where she'd helped so many people rebuild their lives after trauma. Now it would need rebuilding itself, and she couldn't help but see the metaphor in that. "Darius," she said as they prepared to leave, "what happened tonight? The way we fought together, it felt natural," he finished for her. "Like we'd been doing it for years instead of days." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The mate bond had facilitated a connection between them that transcended her rational objections and that scared her almost as much as the attack itself. "The bond works both ways," he said softly. "I felt your determination to protect Mrs. Henderson. I felt your rage when they threatened to hurt her, and I felt your power when you commanded them to stop. Is that why you came? Because you felt I was in danger?" "I came because I couldn't stay away," he admitted. "The bond has been driving me crazy since that night in the circle. But yes, when I felt your fear spike, nothing could have kept me from getting to you." Marcus's headlights swept across the parking lot, and Darius gestured toward the door. "Come on. It's time you learned why the Black Moons are so interested in claiming you, and why your refusal to accept the lunar position might have consequences none of us anticipated." As they walked toward the car, Serena caught sight of her reflection in the glass door of the building next to her office. For just a moment, in the shifting light and shadows, she could have sworn she saw golden eyes staring back at her instead of her usual brown ones. But when she looked again, they were normal. Human. She was beginning to suspect that nothing about her would ever be normal again. The sanctuary's archives lay buried beneath the old stone chapel that had served as the Pack's meeting place for over 2 centuries. As Darius led her down the narrow stone steps, Serena could smell the weight of history in the air, old parchment, candle wax, and something else that made her newly awakened wolf senses prickle with recognition. "Elena's waiting for us," Marcus said from behind them, his voice echoing off the ancient walls. "She's not happy about sharing the old records, but after tonight, everything changes," Darius finished grimly. The vault was larger than Serena had expected, carved directly into the mountain rock, with shelves stretching up to a vaulted ceiling. Thousands of books, scrolls, and documents filled every available space, creating a maze of Pack history that felt almost alive in the flickering candlelight. Elena stood at the center of it all, her weathered hands clutching a leather-bound tome that looked older than the building above them. When she saw Serena, her expression was a complex mixture of resignation and something that might have been fear. "So," the elder said without preamble, "you finally forced our hand. I hoped we'd have more time before the truth came out." "What truth?" Serena demanded, her patience fraying after the night's revelations. "Everyone keeps talking about my bloodline, my family history, like there's some great secret." "Well, I'm done with secrets." Elena's laugh was bitter. "Child, your entire existence has been built on secrets. Your parents, your late transformation, even your arrival in our territory, none of it was coincidence." She opened the ancient tome, revealing pages covered in symbols that seemed to shift and writhe in the candlelight. Some were recognizable as early forms of writing, but others looked like nothing human hands could have created. "This," Elena said, pointing to a passage near the bottom of the page, "is the chronicle of the Moonborn. It tells the story of bloodlines that carry the original wolf magic, undiluted by centuries of human integration." Serena leaned closer, trying to make sense of the archaic text. "I can't read this." "Few can," Elena replied, "but the relevant part translates roughly to this: when the moon bleeds and territories war, the lost daughter shall rise. Neither fully wolf nor human, she will bridge the divide or destroy all in the attempt." The words sent a chill down Serena's spine. "And you think this refers to me?" "I know it does." Elena turned several pages, revealing a detailed family tree that stretched back over 3 centuries. At the very bottom, in fresh ink that looked barely dry, was Serena's name. "Your great-great-grandmother was Lydia Ashford, one of the last pure moonborn wolves. She disappeared in 1847, supposedly killed by hunters. But we've recently discovered she survived, had a daughter, and that daughter's line has been hidden in the human world ever since." "That's impossible," Serena whispered. But even as she said it, she could feel the truth resonating in her bones. "My parents never mentioned anything about this." "Because they didn't know," Darius said softly. "The Moonborn families developed ways to suppress the wolf gene, to hide their children from those who would use their power. Your parents probably believed they were entirely human, but someone knew," Marcus added. "Someone triggered your transformation deliberately, probably hoping to awaken your moonborn abilities." Serena sank into one of the ancient chairs scattered around the vault, her mind reeling. "The Black Moons. They knew something about my bloodline. They said Adrian would be pleased to learn his suspicions were correct." Elena nodded grimly. "Adrian Blackmoon has been searching for moonborn bloodlines for years. He believes that if he can collect enough of the old power, he can break the territorial treaties and unite all the packs under his rule." "But why target me specifically?" "Because," Elena said, closing the tome with a heavy thud. "You're not just any moon-born descendant. According to the prophecy, you're the one who's supposed to either unite the packs peacefully or watch them destroy each other in war." The weight of that revelation settled on Serena's shoulders like a crushing burden. Everything, her late transformation, her rejection of Darius, the attack tonight, it was all connected to a destiny she'd never chosen and barely understood. "There's more," Elena continued reluctantly. "The prophecy speaks of a test, a choice that the lost daughter must make. She can accept her place in the old order and bring peace through traditional bonds, or she can forge a new path and risk everything in the attempt." "The claiming ceremony," Darius said, understanding dawning in his voice. "Your rejection wasn't just personal defiance. It was the first part of the prophecy fulfilling itself." Serena looked up at him, seeing her own confusion reflected in his dark eyes. "So what happens now? Do I have some cosmic destiny to fulfill, or can I still choose my own path?" "That," said a new voice from the stairs, "depends on whether you're willing to fight for that choice." They all turned to see Rebecca Torres descending into the vault, but the young woman looked different, older somehow, more serious than her 18 years should have allowed. In her hands, she carried a wooden box that radiated power even from across the room. "Rebecca," Elena said sharply, "you shouldn't be here. This doesn't concern you." "Doesn't it?" Rebecca approached them with a confidence that made Serena's wolf instincts take notice. "When the future of the pack hangs in the balance, when the woman I've looked up to for months might be walking into a trap she doesn't even recognize." She set the box on the table next to Elena's tome. "I've been having dreams, Elena, the same dreams you told me to ignore. But tonight, after the attack, they became too vivid to dismiss." "What kind of dreams?" Serena asked, though part of her wasn't sure she wanted to know. "I see you standing at a crossroads in the forest, but it's not really a crossroads. It's a battlefield. On one side is Adrian Blackmoon with an army of wolves, on the other is Darius with our pack. And in the middle is something else, something that doesn't look like either side could handle it." Rebecca opened the wooden box, revealing a silver pendant in the shape of a crescent moon. The moment the artifact was exposed to the air, every wolf in the room felt its power like a physical force. "This belonged to Lydia Ashford," Rebecca continued. "Eleanor's kept it hidden for decades, but the dreams told me where to find it. They also told me what it really is." "A focusing crystal," Elena breathed, her face pale with shock. "I thought it was just a family heirloom." "It's more than that," Rebecca said. "It's a key. The Moonborn didn't just hide their children, they hid their power, locked it away in artifacts like this until someone worthy could claim it." Serena stared at the pendant, feeling drawn to it despite her reservations about anything else mystical being forced into her life. "And you think I'm supposed to use it?" "I think you're going to need it," Rebecca replied, "because Adrian isn't just coming for you anymore. My dreams show him moving against the entire territory within days. He's using your rejection of Darius as proof that our pack is weak, divided. He's rallying other alphas to join him." Darius moved to stand beside Serena's chair, his protective instincts clearly warring with the need to let her make her own choices. "If Adrian's planning a full territorial assault, we need to warn the other packs, start organizing defenses." "It's too late for traditional responses," Rebecca said. "The dreams are clear about that. The old ways of handling territorial disputes won't work anymore. Adrian has something else, something that gives him an advantage we can't match with conventional pack tactics." "What kind of advantage?" Marcus asked. Rebecca's expression grew troubled. "He has another Moonborn, someone who's been working with him willingly, someone who's been using their power to corrupt other wolves, turn them into something more than just pack members." The implications of that statement hit the room like a physical blow. If Adrian had access to Moonborn power and was using it to enhance his pack, then Darius's wolves were facing an enemy unlike anything they'd encountered before. "Who?" Elena demanded. "Who could have that kind of ability?" "I don't know yet," Rebecca admitted. The dreams don't show faces clearly, but whoever it is, they've been preparing for this conflict for years. They triggered Serena's transformation as part of their plan. Why would they want me awakened if they're working against us? Serena asked. Because, Rebecca said slowly, as if working through the logic herself, they need you to make a specific choice. The prophecy works both ways. You can either stop Adrian's war or you can enable it. If you choose traditional bonding with Darius, you unite our pack, but leave Adrian free to claim that unity as weakness. If you reject all pack bonds, you create the chaos he needs to justify his conquest. So I'm damned either way, Serena said bitterly. Or, Rebecca said, lifting the pendant from its box, you choose a third option. You claim your full moonborn heritage and forge a completely new path. Serena took the pendant, gasping as power flowed through her the moment her fingers touched the silver. Images flashed through her mind, wolves running through moonlit forests, ancient ceremonies that predated modern pack structures, and most clearly, a vision of herself standing before assembled packs with power radiating from her like light. I can see it, she whispered. Not just our pack, but all of them. United not through conquest or traditional bonds, but through something else entirely. The old alliances, Elena said, understanding dawning in her voice. Before territories became rigid, before alphas ruled through dominance alone, the packs were connected through the Moonborn. They served as bridges, mediators, keepers of the greater good. But that role died out centuries ago, Darius protested. The bloodlines were lost, the knowledge forgotten. Not lost, Serena said, the pendant's power still flowing through her. Hidden, waiting for the right moment to return. She stood, feeling more certain than she had since her transformation began. Adrian thinks he can use Moonborn power to dominate the other packs. But what if instead I use it to offer them something better? Not conquest, not submission, but true cooperation. That's incredibly dangerous, Marcus warned. If you're wrong, if the other alphas see you as a threat instead of a mediator, then we'll face the same war we're already heading toward, Serena finished. But if I'm right, we might be able to end centuries of territorial conflict. Darius was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, measured. What would that mean for us? For the mate bond? It was the question she'd been dreading, because the answer had become clear the moment she touched the pendant. It means, I can't be your Luna in the traditional sense. The Moonborn path requires independence, neutrality. I can love you, fight beside you, support you, but I can't be bound to any single pack. The pain that flashed across his features was almost unbearable, but underneath it she saw something else. Pride, and a respect that warmed her more than any traditional submission could have. Then we'll find a new way, he said simply. If the old bonds don't work for who you're meant to be, then we'll create new ones. Eleanor cleared her throat, drawing their attention back to the immediate crisis. This is all very inspiring, but Adrian's army isn't going to wait for you to figure out ancient Moonborn diplomacy. If Rebecca's dreams are accurate, we have at most 48 hours before he moves against us. Then we'd better move fast, Serena said, slipping the pendant's chain over her head. The moment the silver touched her skin, she felt her connection to every wolf in the territory strengthen. She could sense their fears, their hopes, their desperate need for leadership that would keep their families safe. Rebecca, she said, turning to the young woman who just changed everything, I need you to reach out to your gift, see if you can contact the other packs. Warn them about what's coming, but also tell them about the alternative we're offering. Elena, I need everything you know about Moonborn protocols, especially anything about interpack mediation. Darius, Marcus, we need to prepare our people, but not for traditional warfare. We're going to try something that's never been attempted before. As they dispersed to their tasks, Serena remained in the vault for a moment, surrounded by centuries of pack history. Tomorrow, she would either help write a new chapter in that history or watch it end in blood. But for the first time since her transformation began, she felt like she was finally moving towards something she'd chosen rather than something that had been forced upon her. The pendant pulsed against her chest, warm with promise and power, and in its rhythm she could hear the heartbeat of a future that balanced tradition with change, strength with compassion, unity with freedom. Whether that future could survive Adrian Blackmoon's challenge remained to be seen.